Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Chatting with the Lightkeeper. I'm Edward, otherwise known by I guess you could say, the online persona. If one is allowed to say that, I think it's kind of freaky to say persona in regards to me because I'm just me. But anyway, here in my neck of the woods, it's a beautiful fall day. Beautiful is said dripping with sarcasm. The lake is angry, the wind is screaming off the lake, and the air is filled with tons and tons of liquid sunshine. So it is a cold, damp, wet day. So I am very grateful to be looking at that windy, cold wetness through a window rather than having to be out in it. That is a wonderful thing. But it is starting to feel like fall, which means Halloween is not too far away, and it's time for all the scary movies to come out and hit theaters, and Chucky is back on TV. Um, I'm not a big horror movie fan. Sometimes I do like the ones that are tongue in cheek. Where there's, humor involved as well as that. I'm just not a big gore for the sake of gore person. I do enjoy oh, criminy, why can't I think of his name? He's probably he's probably one of the most famous Michigan alumni out there, and that would be the state of Michigan, not the University of. I believe he's a WMU product. Bruce Campbell. That's it. Bruce Campbell. That's the guy I'm thinking of. Ash versus the Evil Dead, because there's so much. I mean, it's funny. In a way, it sort of makes fun of some of that whole genre, and the whole time it's telling the low budget tale. Those are fun. But since it's Halloween and we have crazy, spooky, scary movies and kids dressing up and even dressing up our pets, um, let's talk a little bit about what are you scared of? Um, Now, I have some legitimate, well, at least for me, they're legitimate fears. They are probably irrational to some of you, but for me, they're very, very legitimate. I am afraid of heights. And that probably seems contradictory. For those of you who know, I have a love of skiing. And I will say that oftentimes the ride up on the lift is very scary for me, while the slide down the mountain is not at all. But boy, that ride up can be absolutely petrifying. In fact, I am no medical doctor, and therefore I can't say for certain, but I can say when the old Shirley Lake Express at Palisades at Tahoe had a mechanical malfunction, we'll call it that. Basically, it required the lift to suddenly go into reverse operation. Yeah, I probably had a panic attack when that happened. I mean, there's no like speaker system like on an airplane that says, "Hey, the lift is having a mechanical problem and we're going to go in reverse now," just so you are aware of. I went from hanging over the highest point where you're kind of suspended over this huge little valley with I'm assuming in warmer weather, there's probably streams and plenty of rocks down there to suddenly going backwards. And boy, it scared the bejesus out of me. Thankfully, nothing like, you know, fluid wise came out, although, um, yeah, it was very, very scary. And it was probably kind of a panic attack-ish thing for me. I had to, definitely had to stop and get myself put together once I got off the lift, and I have not ridden Shirley Lake since then, although I have ridden the replacement Shirley Lake, but the old Shirley Lake Express, the pre-replacement, never, 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 ever, ever again. Couldn't do it. So obviously I have a fear of heights. Another thing that I have a fear of is needles. So that means tattoos definitely are not my cup of tea. And also, like some people in the lifestyle enjoy needle play, where they use needles and do little designs on people's skin. Yeah, no, that like totally freaks me right out. Because needles are a phobia, so I can't go there. But the thing about fear is that we can overcome it. We can learn to although I have not attempted to, and I don't have any desire to learn to overcome the needle thing. When it's like doctor's visit time for a blood test, and or a few times in my life I have been lucky enough to need some IV fluids for something. It is a simple, I am not going to look at the needle, just tell me when it's all done, please. And I can get through it. So that's not a fear I am in the mood to overcome. But one of the fears I had when I first started my whole journey in kink was really kind of twofold. One, I was scared of the whole kink thing. Like, I was scared of being judged for being involved. I mean, it was I could barely admit it to myself kind of thing once I decided that there was something missing. The quick backstory is I was introduced to all this wonderfulness in college. And then after the college experience, I put it away. I said it was a college phase, it was part of being a kid, and I'm an adult now because, I got this here piece of paper says I'm an adult. Um, and so I put it away. Tried to be the good vanilla guy, the good vanilla boyfriend, put it away. Um, yeah, those couple of relationships just didn't work. Same problem. There was always something missing. So, did that deep soul searching, and everything sort of kind of came back to kink. And so it was kind of tiptoe, dip the toe in, pull the toe out because I really was struggling to accept. There was a fear of accepting this. And I don't know why. I don't know what was behind the fear, what was irrational about it. But it was there. So I had this fear of exploring the lifestyle. Um, that held me back. It really, really held me back from exploring. But slowly, little bit by little bit by little bit, the fear went away, the fear went away, the fear went away. And then one day, obviously the fear reached the point where I was able to set it aside and I started a blog because I wanted to have a creative outlet and I wanted to also have an outlet um, for all the goodness of the kink side of me as well. And I could be creative and I could have an outlet for kink. So I started the blog, started writing. Um, I found, I can't compose music. I can't play music. I cannot draw. I cannot sculpt. But writing is kind of a jam. I enjoy it. And so writing and specifically writing about the lifestyle and my experiences therein became kind of my thing. So I started the blog, and it wasn't, of course, too long before while I was sharing what I thought. Of course, it angered somebody, upset them, and they had a huffy puff, and it brought back a fear that perhaps is unique to me, but I don't think so. If you grew up nerdy, you kind of have a fear of negative attention, like, or perhaps it's better, like, you have that fear left over from high school that you're going to anger some big bad jock on the football team, and they're going to huff and puff and potentially stuff you in your locker. Kind of irrational for an adult to feel that way through a reply on the internet, but I did. And it took a while to get through it. And I've learned to be able to set aside the fear of upsetting people because sharing my thoughts I know aren't going to be jam for everyone. And in fact, in this lifestyle, there are so many different ways to practice it. Obviously, what works for me um, may or may not work for you. And there's nothing wrong with it not working with you. In fact, that's perfectly well. And I love it when people say that it doesn't work for them and they tell me why. Um, that's perfect. It's great because I get new perspective. And by them hearing me or having heard me, they have a new perspective. And that is absolutely, I think, a fantastic thing. Except people nowadays, we can't say we agree to disagree anymore. Have you noticed that? It's like it's a lost art. And especially on the internet, there are so many people that troll and whatnot, or even bandy about as dominance, and yet if somebody disagrees with them, they sort of turn into, I don't know, kind of like the big bad wolf from the Three Little Piggies. They start huffing and puffing, and they're threatening to blow your house away because they just don't just they disagree with you, and it's not really ever over important things. It seems like it's just I don't know. It's like ego gets in the way, or I don't understand it. I come from a background where you talk things out. You have an issue. Uh, okay, I should say, let me rephrase that. Since hockey season is here, and yes, I grew up playing hockey, played all my life, and played until fairly, well, I still occasionally do play for fun, but I no longer play competitively. How about that? I'll go play, hang out with the guys and mess around, and we'll play, games at the rink, but it won't be competitive. But yes, other than like during hockey games when disputes weren't talked out. If you've ever seen a hockey game, you understand you don't necessarily talk things through. Um, but other than that, especially in the lifestyle, you should be able to talk things through. You should be able to say, hey, that works for you, that doesn't work for me, and here's why, and not be offended. I also think that somebody, if they said, I see that what you're doing, I think it's unsafe, here's why, once again, share that. It shouldn't result in huffy puffiness or somebody being angry or having their underwear all twisted up. And it's one of the biggest annoyances I have with the online lifestyle. In person, when you go to a munch, oftentimes you'll have people that do practice it differently, sitting right across the table talking about why they do what they do. And the other person on the other side completely does it 180 degrees different, but they're having a conversation about it. And they're learning, you're learning, even if you're learning what you don't like and will never do. It's not conducted in the internet huff and puff. The big bad wolf is not in the room. And what kind of brings us to mind is, I guess it's 6 weeks ago on the podcast, maybe 7 weeks ago, we talked a little bit about the convicted sex offender who wrote these books on the lifestyle as educational. And so somebody sent me a message on my blog and said, "Hey, could you reshare what you wrote about it?" And that writing that I reshared was almost we're almost pushing 2 years on that blog post. And so I reshared it, and holy cow, people got in a whole tizzy fit. Well, one person in particular got into a tizzy fit because I shared this, because they had apparently recommended this person's books before, and I was trying to burn books and cancel people, and I'm like, whoa. All I'm trying to say with this lifestyle is we shouldn't allow convicted sex offenders in it. I mean, put your hands up if you agree with me there. If you are a known sex offender, the DS lifestyle and the BDSM world is a place where, as a community, we should say, hey, you are not welcomed here. There are so many people who come to this lifestyle that are victims of abuse or traumatized in some way, that there's no place for somebody who is convicted of taking advantage, taking and abusing. It's no, it's not welcomed here in my world. Once again, these are my opinions. You can disagree. Um, and that's fine. And then the other thing that I stated was that as a community, we shouldn't allow them to profit off the lifestyle. If you are a convicted sex offender in the States, there's that wonderful sex offender registry, and you have to list your career. And if you list author, hey, that's fine. Go write books about anything in the world. You don't get to write books that, as a community, we are going to buy anymore, in my opinion. That's just it. I'm not saying we're taking his books out of the, Lord knows they're not in any libraries. Police public libraries here in my conservative neck of the woods wouldn't be allowed. But no, I'm not saying take his books out of publication. Definitely not saying burn them. I don't believe in any of that stuff. But I do believe that as a community, we should say, hey, you're a convicted sex offender, and we are not going to support you anymore because of what you have done, the acts that you have done. And for me to say that and for me to get, you know, I don't know what the right word is just, I don't know, a person come slightly unhinged, not completely crazy, but slightly unhinged by that. It's just, it boggles my mind that we live in that world. But the beautiful thing is that that fear, because I was the geeky bullied kid of high school, I don't fear that anymore. The fear has, I've worked through it. I'm not saying that people can't use words and say things that won't hurt. Obviously, words can hurt a lot more sometimes than physical things. You know, you get going back to hockey, you get mollywopped in the face. Yeah, your face is gonna hurt for a few days. And words can take a lot longer than a few days to heal. So words can hurt, but I don't fear words from people anymore. You know, yes, they can still hurt me, but I don't fear them. And in fact, in a way, it's a badge of honor that something that I strongly believe that, you know, the community should not allow sex offenders in its midst, especially pedophiles. And if you feel otherwise and that angers you so much that you are going to use words to come after me, hey, that is, you know what? I'm kind of proud of that. And it's not a fear of mine. The lifestyle through me expressing and writing has allowed me to not have that fear of what other people don't think that don't matter. Yes, there are people, I will admit, that matter. It matters deeply to me what they think of of me or my actions. But those are very, very special people in my life. You know, in my physical, they're people that are in my world. Whether they're, you know, actually sitting across from me or not, they are people that matter. And I think we all have those people that matter where we do care what they think. But that's one of the beautiful things about the lifestyle is taught me to not fear the bully in the room. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, not to fear the bully. It's I don't want to be the bully either. Um, you know, I don't want to take and push my bad experiences on somebody else. But it's taught me not to fear that anymore. So the lifestyle can help us work through our fears, even as simple as you know, getting over the hurdle of what other people think. And that what other people think fear is something I think if you're newer, it has to be something somewhere that you at least think about. I don't think I'm the only nerdy or geeky. I'm not sure where we would draw that line, but I'm not sure. I'm sure I'm not the only person who has come and wondered what would other people think. Now, also at the same time, this might sound crazy. I do a podcast, I have a blog, I'm on social media, that I would worry what other people think, right? You would think that I would have doing all of that, it wouldn't concern me. But it in a way it does. Like I care, those people that know me and that I care about and they care about me. What they think of that stuff does matter to me. And so with that, if you're newer, it must be hard to just kind of get the courage up in a way. And I think it's beautiful when people do get their courage up to explore a little bit, to be able to admit to themselves that they're curious about it and to start down the kinktastic rabbit hole that is all things kink, DS, and BDSM related, because it's a really a journey of self-discovery. Even if you discover that all this lifestyle is just, hey, it's not for you. But that journey to get there, to explore, will be such an enlightening journey for you, and you will better understand yourself when you get out of it. If you ever do come out of the rabbit hole, I started down it in college, and here we are several years later, maybe even a couple more decades later, and still at it, still going down the rabbit hole, still learning, and still growing every single day. So the next thing that trip down the rabbit hole brings to mind, other than the fact that you'll run into people that don't know how to say, "Hey, we see things differently," and be kind to you. So, understand that if you're online, if you're going through the process of exploring and it's just online, understand that you will encounter many more idiots online than you will in person. Because in person, in the in person community, even people who don't like each other, like where they don't like each other, they just don't care for each other, may end up at the same munch. But the beautiful thing about most people in the real world is they're kind to each other. They may not like, you know, Bob sitting across the table from them, and Bob may not like Bill sitting across the table from him. But in a group setting like that, they're going to play nice with each other and then, complain after the fact to their friends what an idiot that other person is. So the in-person community, it's a lot kinder because you have people interacting as humans, where, online we forget that there are humans behind the screen name. Well, most of the time, I guess if you're on Twitter with all of the bots that inhabit that platform, maybe it isn't a person. But anyway, it's a huge, huge thing. And the other thing that comes kind of to mind with the whole exploring and going down the online rabbit hole, there are so many from blog posts to memes to GIFs to little stories to you name it. And you'll see it all the time. And there are things like a real dominant will do X, Y, and Z. A real submissive will do A, B, and C. If you are not really experienced, it can be very easy to fall into the trap of, well, I'm a submissive, so I like A and B, but I don't like C. So I'm gonna have to find a way to learn to like C because everything I'm reading says, true submissives have to like A, B, and C. And the same is true of your dominant. There's so many real or true posts and almost implying that if you don't do what is there, that you are not a real whatever the role is. And that is just it's very hard to overcome those, especially early on in your explorations, because it seems like you see them so often. It can be effective messaging, even though most of those messages that are, in my opinion, that are out there trying to explain what real or true role people are in the lifestyle are actually attempts to be warnings or to be, if people don't do these things, it could be a red flag. They're trying to call attention to the opposite side of that. But if you're new, you don't have the experience to differentiate that this is actually somebody trying to explain red flags rather than green flags. So it can be very easy to not be true to yourself and try to be that missing alphabet piece, they're fill in the blank, a real dominant will do blank. So it can be very easy for a new dominant to try to be blank, even though that's not who they are. So it's very important, no matter what your role and you're being new, to be true to yourself. Be true to yourself and online, understand that if you're going to share an opinion, it's on the internet rather than in person. So expect there to be somebody out there who may try to, be the online bully, um, rather than reach out and have a conversation with you why they disagree. Or perhaps that person online just doesn't have the capacity to engage in an adult conversation. So that's how why they do what they do. Or somehow that by them, what's the slang? Flaming you shows you how much I keep up on things that I don't know that, or it took me a second to think of that. That they're flaming you because they just want the attention, or maybe they can't stand to be thought of as, they think that they're maybe now being perceived in the wrong and they can't handle that. But whatever the reason, it's one of the reasons that the online community is good, but it's also bad. And it's also one of the times and places where I recommend, going to a bunch, sitting down and actually meeting people because there is that kindness. And yes, actually meeting with fellow Kingsters in person can be very intimidating. It can be very intimidating for somebody who is shy. Believe it or not, I can be shy in person. Not shy, perhaps, um, more quiet. I like to survey and observe and learn as much as I can about those around me before I engage, which is different than my work persona, where at work I am very much engaged, outgoing, smiling, happy, always. Um, but that's my work. That's the work world. And so when I'm outside of that, I can definitely enjoy the quiet. But the in-person community is just, it allows you to have that personal connection that you can find online. And it's fabulous when you find it. It doesn't always happen. And there's more, there's more levels of problematic things that can happen online to dig through, but the online world offers the anonymity, which is the other thing. But also remember when you go to meet somebody in person, if you don't, for example, if I went to a in-person gathering and I was nervous and uncomfortable, I don't have to say I'm Edward. I could say that my name was Fago or my name is Rock and Rye. And if you're not from Michigan, you're not going to get the Fago or the Rock and Rye references. But if you are, I just was talking about a soda. Or, yeah, this is Michigan, so it would be a pop. Um, Fago makes fine pop beverages. Um, and currently, I do have some rock and rye to go with my high school dinner of pizza rolls later. So I'm looking forward to that. But remember, you can still keep your anonymity in person. Although you'll be face to face, you can still be anonymously face to face, which gives you that kindness and in person connection that you can have. And just when you go in person, you can kind of go and be very much like online and just not necessarily rather than scrolling through the people. Unfortunately, we can't scroll through people, especially when they get long-winded and boring, which I hope none of you listening are thinking that right now of me going, I wish I could scroll away from this guy. Well, you can, so I guess you have that option at home. But when you're in an in-person meeting or munch, you can just sit back, observe, and choose who you want to interact with from your observations. And perhaps it's no one, and that's fine. And remember, you don't have to say who you are. You can, be Fago or Rock and Rye, although that wouldn't work in Michigan. Probably not northern Ohio or northern Indiana. You might be able to get away with it in Illinois, depending on where in Illinois. But anywho, just it's so important to learn to be yourself and to learn to overcome those fears, to not let the fears that we have, that whether they're rational or not. I mean, it's rational to have a fear of heights. However, it's also very irrational to think that the ski lift that the resort just recently built for, you know, like the Shirley Lake lift at the time that I had my freak out on was a $20 million lift. That a $20 piece of technology is going to deposit me on the canyon floor. Thankfully, it didn't. But the logic kind of goes away when our fears get involved. So it's very important that if we do have fears of exploring the lifestyle or of having our lifestyle interest somehow becoming front page family news on somebody's Facebook page, that we just take our time, we be careful, and take the time to analyze our fears and learn what's behind them and where we can face them and other places like me with needles just politely say no thank you, that's not a fear I want to face. And as far as that goes, I can't see myself wanting to overcome that fear the rest of my life. But who knows what tomorrow will bring. It's filled with surprises. So on that surprising note, let's wrap it up for the week, and I hope that you'll take away the message that you can just be yourself, and it's okay to have fears, and you will run into people when you start getting comfortable sharing opinions. If you are in the online world, you are going to run into people that are going to rabble rouse and try and arouse your anger or your ire simply because that's what they do. And understand that that's going to happen if you choose to get involved in the online community. And if that is something that is a fear of yours, I would suggest forget really engaging so openly with the online community and focus on engaging in your in person community where you will have that person to person connection with. Believe it or not, there is still kindness in this world, and typically people in real life are kinder than they are, much kinder than they are online. Of course, there are always exceptions to that, but that's typically what I have found on my journey around the sun here. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. And no matter where you're listening, please click the follow button so you never miss an episode. And I can't wait to chat with you next week when we will be 1 week closer to Halloween.